Hello and welcome to The Big Fight. If there's one thing that people have been talking about for the first 8-9 months of the Narendra Modi government, it's the fact that while various fringe groups and others have been making statements against religious tolerance, Narendra Modi hasn't said too much himself. This week, in what many are seeing as a landmark moment, the Prime Minister did come out and make a fairly categorical, fairly hard-hitting speech where he clearly outlined a certain blueprint and a roadmap for religious tolerance and said what his government would and would not allow people to do. What exactly lies behind this, the speech? What does it mean going forward? And is this potentially something that we should treat as a major landmark? That's one of the things that we're going to be discussing on The Big Fight this week, and also, of course, other possible course corrections that we are seeing in the Modi government this week, not least of which is the auctioning of that infamous pinstripe suit. 4.3 crore rupees actually is a good price to get for it, but are there some course corrections that we are seeing? Joining us on The Big Fight, Nalin Kohli, spokesperson of the BJP, Dr. Taslim Ahmed Rahmani, the president of the Muslim Political Council of India. Thanks a lot for joining us. Sandeep Mahapatra, member of the RSS. Is that a fair way of introducing you? John Dayal, United Christian Forum. Thanks a lot for being with us. And we also have with us Sanjay Jha, spokesperson of the Congress Party. Thank you all so much for being with us. Before we go any further, I did say that many people considered Narendra Modi's speech this week to be a potential landmark. Let's just hear it again, and then I'll say why I think it's particularly significant.
My government stands by every word of the above declaration. My government will ensure that there is complete freedom of faith and that everyone has the undeniable right to retain or adopt the religion of his or her choice without coercion. Mine will be a government that gives equal respect to all religions. Equal respect for all religions must be in the DNA of every Indian. Unity strengthens us. Division weakens us.
And among the other statements that the Prime Minister did make was very categorically saying, my government will not allow any religious group belonging to the majority or the minority to incite hatred against others overtly or covertly. Mine will be a government that gives equal respect to all religions. Nalin, let me start off by asking you, many people are feeling that this is the speech they've been waiting for Narendra Modi to give for the last 7-8 months. If he'd done that a little earlier, and if he'd sold that pinstripe suit a little earlier, maybe he wouldn't have lost in Delhi.
Well, if he had sold it earlier, he wouldn't have got 4.31 crores, which is going for cleaning of the
Ganga.
Ganga.
Worn it, maybe.
So, I think there are, multiple ways of looking at the same issue.
Just before you go further, let me tell you, I was reading a very interesting blog which said 3 reasons why the BJP lost the Delhi elections. Number 1, the pinstripe suit. Number 2, Hindutva groups and what they have been spreading in the run-up to the elections. And number 3 was the MCD. And if that's a correct analysis, then Narendra Modi has done something about the first 2 anyway this week.
I'm sure the reasons for the defeat, and it's a big defeat for the party, it's almost a whitewash. Not taking away the credit from the Aam Aadmi Party for a very, very big victory. For us, it'll be far more than that. And it's certainly not going to be confined to clothes. That I'm sure about. There's much more to it.
I hope
Let's get back to what you were asking. Actually, Prime Minister Modi has been speaking, and he has spoken at least twice before this, I recall, where he has spoken about the intent behind what he put so bluntly and clearly on that occasion. He spoke about, can we put a halt on terms of communal problems and have more communal harmony? He touched upon that in his Independence Day speech. He has spoken earlier about also equality and development being the mantra. This one becomes heightened in terms of focus, and he spoke specifically on there. A, because the occasion was such, and B, because there had been controversies thereafter, before, just preceding this. So I think it was there. He's reiterated what has been consistent with the thinking of the government, and we are very happy about it.
Although never stated quite in the manner that
of course, I said he stated it clearly.
Out here.
He's basically emphasized Article 25 of the Constitution, and coming from the Prime Minister, it's a direct message about, because he's spoken of the Constitution being the only religious book or the dharma of a government.
Dr. Tasleem Rahmani, your take on this speech, is this the speech that you and others have been waiting for the Prime Minister to deliver? And does it go, if there were any concerns about what his attitude to secularism and his government's attitude to secularism was it answered really in this speech?
You see, first of all, I must welcome his speech. This was something very much we were waiting for last 9 months, but all we know that sometimes things comes after 9 months itself. But 6 months back, as Nalin said, at the Red Fort, he said that there must be a moratorium for 10 months. But 10 years. All 10 years, for all those 6 months, from August to this February, so many things which is creating hatred among the society is happening, and he was silent. And now, just providing this kind of a speech may not be enough. The very other day, Parveen Togodia and the other leaders has commented his speech and this cannot work. So why just delivering a speech? Why don't he come out with a legislation which is pending within the...
what legislation do you need? Article 25 pretty much covers all of this.
No. There is
the preamble of the Constitution fortunately still reads that
there is a bill pending in the House, the Communal Violence Protection and Prevention Bill. Which is pending
there are issues around that particular bill which we can debate in a couple of minutes, but that bill is not as clear cut as...
Just making speeches is not making a difference in the society.
Okay. Sandeep, in this speech, is there a sort of rebuke at what some of the more extreme elements in the Sangh Parivar have been saying? And many people within the Sangh Parivar, including some in the RSS, perhaps interpreted the victory of Narendra Modi last year, in a sweeping victory, as being an endorsement of the more hardline Hindutva policies, which actually this country perhaps has never voted for. Modi himself used to go on saying that it's a vote for development, but there were many people who interpreted the mandate as being a vote for hardline Hindutva politics and policies. In a sense, is this a rebuke to them?
Not at all. As you said, as you read out the speech, and I have an excerpt of this speech, he says, "My government will ensure that there is complete freedom of faith and that everyone has the undeniable right to retain or adopt," please mind the next words, "and adopt the religion of his or her choice without coercion or undue influence."
So without missionary activities.
Correct.
Or
so what Mr. Modi reiterated is what is enshrined in Article 25 of the Constitution, what has been set down by a constitutional bench of the Supreme Court way back in 1977, which say that Article 25 gives you a right to preach, not to convert.
Fine. So you're saying that what Modi said, he did speak about hatred, but he's saying he is also in his speech is a rebuke against conversion and against missionary activities. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is his speech was within the four corners of the constitutional scheme of India and within the four corners of the judgments that have come out of the Honorable Supreme Court. So it applies equally to both majority and minority. It is not as if that it applies only to the majority
but
and not to the minority.
But why should there be, actually I've heard that interpretation also, that he was addressing both the majority and the minority, but that's fine, that's what secularism should be.
The interpretation that somebody sort of certain section of the media thought or propagated that this Modi government would be a government of the hardliners, I think it is a totally wrong interpretation. Never ever from the Sangh platform or Sangh for that matter per se, never ever this thing has been given out to the society at large. I needed to clarify that because that is a pertinent question that you asked.
Fair enough. Yeah. And I think this has been stated before by the BJP that not everyone who's speaking, although some of those people are union ministers.
One of them was condemned on the floor of the House.
Yeah, but the fact still is that you did make them union ministers. So as a result, you can't say there can't be that fringe of their ministers.
No, hang on. Others who are members of parliament certainly don't represent the mainstream thinking of the party. I mean, neither the party and Mr. Mohan Bhagwat himself of the RSS said, we don't look at ladies as being factories of producing children. It's their own personal right. It has to be respected. And these are issues, if someone comes up, they have to answer for it independently, individually.
Yeah. I mean, if you really wanted to and the government wanted to, you could have silenced the fringe elements far more effectively.
But you're yourself calling them fringe. We are focusing on the mainstream.
But some of the fringe are ministers in the union government, so I'm not sure how fringe that makes them. They are ministers, they're union ministers. So that's slightly more area of concern. John, first of all, your overall reaction to the speech, and to the extent, as Sandeep was correctly pointing out, he very clearly says that no one will be allowed to spread hatred covertly or overtly, majority or minority. That's fair enough, surely. That's the way it should be.
No, ideally, this should have been the big concurrence rather than the big fight, because I do not think anybody will say we do not welcome a speech. And for me particularly, as a Christian, we invited him. We were the ones who were saying for 9 months, as we said during Mr. Bajpayee's time, speak up, break your silence, silence kills, and then he speaks up. I think I'll be a very ungrateful Christian and a very ungrateful Indian if I were not to be expressing my gratitude and my thanks, Honorable the Prime Minister, which I do again once on record now. But having said that, this could have been very simple. All he had to do to reassure religious minorities was to put on a prayer cap, and that would have sent such a strong signal, because the other signal went against him, because when he refused that. So
you're saying he should wear a skull cap?
No, I'm not saying he should. I said he could have and need not have spent an hour at a Catholic
He says that that's not my style of
No, but he's never believed in tokenism.
Sir, may I just...
Although he wears a number of other hats and caps.
Not for religious
No,
reasons.
but may I just say that having said that, having welcomed what he says, and I must note that it goes slightly beyond the constitutional provisions in trying to equate, presume that there is a lot of aggression also from equidistance. And what I pick up his point, that there is an implied rebuke to missionaries. And that is where my problem begins.
Would you like to respond to what he was saying, that he is in a sense out here also saying that conversion should not be allowed and that missionary activity should not be allowed?
But I wish he would say that, because that would then
He
mean...
did, doesn't he? That's
No,
what
not
he's saying,
really.
he did say it.
Not really. That's his interpretation of it, not really. I too heard this speech and have read it 5 times since then.
Okay.
But the implications or even the interpretation by the RSS that he is calling for a ban on conversions poses grave problems, because that is the very essence of not just Article 25, but the basic preamble to the Constitution, the right to profess.
I'll give you the exact words. My government will ensure that there is complete freedom of faith and everyone has an undeniable right to retain or adopt the religion of his or her choice without coercion or undue influence. Are
It
you
has
okay with that?
always been the Christian point of view that there cannot be.
Without coercion or undue influence. His position is that there is coercion and undue
May I just
influence.
complete my sentence? The coercion is laughable, because a micro minority, a pastor goes to a village where just about everybody is a Hindu. He is in no position to coerce anybody. He'll be lynched. But may I just complete it? Secondly, about the inducement. How can you induce, and the inference that there is inducement? And third, may I take a small objection to the term minorities and the term missionaries, as if missionary is a bad word. Mission. The RK sends out missionaries across the globe.
First of all, this message is to India. The message is really not to looking at it from a minority majority. He's reiterating Article 25. The choice of a religion, whoever desires to be any religion, is a personal choice.
Absolutely.
You can appeal to someone, but whether they want to convert or not is an individual choice, and that's the crux of the constitutional position. 3, there is no religion that is bad. The question is the propagators of it, which may be any religion, if they are not following the ethics of that religion, that's an individual thing. It has nothing to do with the religion. So if anyone, so by that same logic, what Father's saying, he has the right to preach. That is, as a missionary, okay, as a Pandit would do it, a Maulvi would do it, there's no harm. But he cannot say that I have a right to convert, because the conversion itself is an individual choice of the person who's standing on the other side.
Sir,
you can, right?
The Supreme Court has said exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, I know that. I'm only putting it in clear perspective, because this is a sensitive area that's open to confusion. I'm not criticizing. I'm just simply pointing out what is the nuance. So my last sentence on this is, therefore, a person of anything, like if you'll say it, I'll say it on reverse. I'll start with this. If the Ghar Vapsi, which is in news, does something which is against law, they are as responsible to face the consequences as law as, hypothetically speaking, if there was a case of someone forcing a conversion or inducing or coercing a religion. They are identical, and that's the position in terms of the law.
Absolutely agree with you, sir. Conversion is an individual's choice. No pastor can say that I am converting anybody. It is the work of the Holy Spirit working on that individual, whether he wants to adopt Jesus as a savior or not. Absolutely. Nobody can force him to. Nobody can presume that
But
he's
can there
acting
be
on behalf of
inducement
God.
offered, which is what I think
Yes,
Sandeep is
that's what
referring
my
to. He says
problem
that there's
lies.
inducements that are being given.
Yes.
I agree with you.
See,
He says there can't be coercion in a country like India, but your
I would
point
be very
is that
happy.
there
I
can
would be very happy if that is the ground realities. But
What
let's
is the coercion that happens?
no, I'm coming to that. Let's analyze the 60 years of history of this country. In the 1950s, early 1950s, mid 1950s, we had a Niyogi Commission appointed by a Congress ruled government. In three instances, there are three instances when the Parliament was about to pass a bill in 50s, 60s, and 70s, and once in 1981 because of the Meenakshipuram incident that happened. Indira Gandhi, who was the Prime Minister at that time, had asked the state governments to enact law. There were certain states who enacted law that those laws were challenged before the Supreme Court. As I said earlier on, 1977, the Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of those legislations. In the last decade, 2005-2006, Himachal Pradesh at that point in time, governed by a Congress ministry, it passed its legislation on conversion. Arunachal Pradesh, again governed by another.
Hang on.
So my point
We
is,
know what the legal.
No,
I'm
Vikram,
just trying to say, you are saying that there is coercion
yes,
and inducement.
my point is, had there been no such issues, there was no occasion for all these states, and mind you, these are all Congress ruled states, to pass such enactments. So I would be very happy if what Mr. Dayal is saying, that on the ground there is no coercion. I would be very happy if people are changing their hearts, so to say, by their own volition, by free will. Then that is a different thing. But there are records and voluminous records. There are reports, whether or not mainstream media has reported those things. But there are records to say otherwise.
Let me get him on this, then I want to come to one or two other aspects of this.
My only defense is facts and truth. I am not saying that the Congress is washed in Ganga Jal. Quite a lot of these things have happened during the Congress regime, but that does not make them any the good. Two, the Niyogi Commission is a fact. Nehru told the Chief Minister then of Madhya Pradesh, Ravi Shankar, you're playing with fire. Orissa High Court quashed the Orissa legislation bill on this. Therefore, it had to go to the Supreme Court.
Yes.
But
Supreme Court upheld it.
Because two courts ruled contradictorily. Lastly, and I would be very happy if the Modi government tomorrow issue a white paper telling us that despite the 6 laws in 6 states, what has been the absolute number of prosecutions and convictions for fraud or forcible or any other conviction.
This is all very good and very pleasant, and at a theoretical level, this is exactly the way it should be. This is the way the country should be. This is what secularism should be. And what Narendra Modi said is all very correct. So far, so good. Now, as we all know, that's not necessarily the way everybody interprets it. Even after Narendra Modi made his speech, members of the Vishwa Hindu Parishad said, this does not apply to the majority community, it only applies to the minority community. All he's talking about is banning conversions. A lot of people, and I'm not sure how large the number is, a lot of people believe that everything that we are saying is not the way it should be, that India should be a Hindu Rashtra. There are elements in the Muslim community, no doubt, who feel that this is Darul Harb or whatever it is, and therefore they should fight against it. Not everyone agrees with this particular view.
See, the problem is, whenever somebody talks about the RSS or the Sangh, I am reminded of a story that I used to hear in my school days. That earlier on, maybe 50 years back, foreigners used to see India as a land of serpents, elephants, snake charmers. So the same applies sadly to RSS, because the problem here is somehow or other, all the media attention has been diverted, so to say, about something which RSS is not involved. The media never talks about the development work that is being done by RSS in the far corners of the country. The media never talks about the Ekal Vidyalayas being run by RSS in tribal areas. The media never talks about the student being taught in Vanvasi Kalyan Ashram. Now coming to the Hindu Rashtra concept. When RSS talks about Hindu Rashtra, it does not say that India has to be a theocratic state. It only says when the concept of Hindu Rashtra has to be understood as a cultural concept. So what Mr. Ramani says, I am very glad that he said that.
So you are contradicting. So when Narendra Modi says equal respect for all religions must be in the DNA of every Indian,
Correct.
the minute you are saying that India has a Hindu Rashtra,
No.
it's not equal respect.
That's
for every
so. That is the
religion.
problem.
Unless you're saying Hinduism is not a religion and it's a way of life.
All the Indians, be it Muslim, Hindu, Christian, they share a common culture, a common descent. Therefore, when you talk about Hindu Rashtra, we say that India is a Hindu Rashtra. May I repeat again that it is not a theocratic thing that I am talking about or a political
Why
thing I am talking
insisting
about.
on a particular
I am only
word?
talking about cultural.
Why you are not happy
so
with
his-
India and Bharat and Hindustan? Why you are not?
I am just
happy?
answering. I am
No,
just
so his-
answering to what Bikram asked me about
yet-
Hindu Rashtra.
but that answer leaves certain questions that we are still which were perplexed about, because as he rightly said, the minute if you were to say that India is a Indian Rashtra, Bharatiya Rashtra, Hindustani Rashtra, nobody would ever have any
Let me
issue
answer
with
you.
it.
Let me answer
The minute
you.
you're saying it's a Hindu Rashtra, suddenly he's uncomfortable
Let me
about
answer
it,
you.
and Mr. Dayal is uncomfortable
I
about
appreciate
it.
they have their own viewpoint, but let me answer it.
No, I'm trying to figure out how, in your viewpoint, should Dr. Rahmani and Mr. Dayal,
Yes.
how should they be comfortable
Yes.
if you are to say this is a Hindu Rashtra? Doesn't that mean that in some way they are second class?
No, not at all.
Why?
Not at all.
Because possibly we are third class.
No, not at all. You are first class, sir. Maybe if there is any other class above than first class, maybe you are in that class. So what I'm trying to say is, if you would have heard Mr. Mohan Bhagwat spoke 1st of February or 9th of February, he has categorically stated in so many words that all religions in India are to be cherished. It is not that we are imposing our thought processes on other religions.